This executive book briefing is about the book, or from the book, Encouraging the Heart by Kouzes and Pozner. James Kouzes and Barry Pozner. Now, the concept of this book is very simple. People like to be encouraged. Now, let's make it stronger. People need to be encouraged. And so if the issue is encouraging people, and if, as you well know, every city government is exactly like every company and organization. Of course you have buildings. Of course you have resources. But what you really have is people. It is the people that shape a city. It is the people that serve the citizens of the city. It is the people. You know the old rule from Good to Great by Jim Collins, that if you get the wrong people on the bus, or if you get good people on the bus but doing the wrong thing, you are in trouble. The only way to succeed is to get the right people in the right slot on the bus going the right direction. And how do you get those people to become better at what they do? Well, we could have chosen a number of books about the concept of helping people get better. There are some rules about the individuals that we need to remember. For example, Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers, he popularized a concept from Dr. Erickson in Florida called the 10,000 hour rule. It takes 10,000 hours to get really good at something. If you spend a few hours, you'll get okay. The more hours you spend, the better, but it takes 10,000 hours to master something. And so the best customer service people are people who spend a lot of hours at it, and this is from a guy named Jeff Colvin in a different book that says that what you have to do to get better is to spend those 10,000 hours correctly. You have to do disciplined practice. If you don't do disciplined practice with the intent of getting better, then you're not going to get better. Well, Kouzes and Pozner in the book Encouraging the Heart they say, in essence, you've got to decide to get better at helping people get better. If you don't get better at helping people get better, your people won't get any better. That may sound simplistic, but it's actually brilliant. So if you'll now take your handout, and I want to read you the introduction on the first page. This story is a constant reminder to us of the power of a very simple principle of human performance. People like to be recognized for doing their best. Yes, they do. You remember taking one of your children when they were young to school, and they would be in a school play, and they'd be up on the stage, or you'd take them to soccer games, and they would be out on the soccer field, and they would look to you for your approval. It was your child looking to his or her parents for approval. That's the way it works. People like to be recognized for doing their best. Well, we're all grown-up children. We want somebody to say, "You've done well." This book is about how do you say to somebody, "You've done well," and until you learn how to say "you've done well," they're not going to get any better. It's that simple. So, we don't do our best in isolation. This is a simple truth, and it reminds us that we all need to be encouraged to do our best. Literally, we need to be encouraged. We need to receive encouragement in order to do our best. And so these men who have written other fine books on leadership have now written this book, Encouraging the Heart, a leader's guide to rewarding and encouraging others. Turn to page 2 of the handout, and let's begin with some of the key quotes from the book. Look at the second paragraph. Encouraging the Heart is about the dichotomous nature of leadership. It's about toughness and tenderness, guts and grace, firmness and fairness, fortitude and gratitude, passion and compassion. Leaders must have courage themselves, and they must impart it to others. This book is about how leaders effectively give of their hearts so that others may fully develop and experience their own. I recently reread a wonderful book written by a former Navy SEAL commander called Leadership Lessons of the Navy SEALs. And it says in that book that the number one criteria once a SEAL is accepted as a SEAL and trained as a SEAL, it's not easy to do that, but once they do that, when they're on a team, the number one criteria for success is, does the leader care about everybody on the team? People who are cared for do better. People who feel cared for do better. And so this book is talking about that process of caring. I want you to stop and think a minute. Have you ever worked for a leader who cared more for the system, the rules, the protocol than he or she cared for the people? It's caring for the people that generates better effectiveness. Somebody who champions the rules, somebody who champions the system, but doesn't care about the people will not develop people. So this book is talking about how do you go about the process of developing people, and you start with caring for them. Now, to be credible, leaders must do what they expect others to do. You can't tell somebody to do something. You have to show what to be done. You have to do it yourself. Leaders have to do it. Encouraging the heart is ultimately about keeping hope alive. I hate to tell you this, some of the people you work with get discouraged rather than encouraged. So you need to keep their hope alive. Leaders keep hope alive when they set high standards and genuinely express optimism about an individual's capacity to achieve them. They keep hope alive when they give feedback and publicly recognize a job well done. Remember the old rule: criticize in private, praise in public. That is absolutely critical. You criticize in private, but you praise in public. They keep hope alive when they give their constituents the internal support that all human beings need to feel that they and their work are important and have meaning. We don't have time in this presentation to talk about millennials, but it turns out that the younger the worker, the more they are intent on finding meaning in their work. But in reality, everybody wants to have meaning in their work. They keep hope alive when they train and coach people to exceed their current capacities. Most important, leaders keep hope alive when they set an example. There really is nothing more encouraging than to see our leaders practice what they preach. Now, how do you do this? Well, it starts with where you start. Really believe in your heart of hearts that your fundamental purpose, your reason for being, is to enlarge the lives of others. Your life will be enlarged also, and all of the other things we have been taught to concentrate on will take care of themselves. Those are thoughts drawn from Pete Thigpen of Executive Reserves. Ask yourself this question. This is a very simple question. Do I need encouragement to perform at my best? You bet you do. I do, and you do, and so do the people who work with you. They need encouragement to perform at their best. Expressing genuine appreciation for the efforts and successes of others means we have to show our emotions. We have to talk about our feelings in public. We have to make ourselves vulnerable to others. For many of us, perhaps most of us, this can be very tough, even terrifying. There'll be another book briefing in this series on a book by Vern Harnish called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And one of the things he says in that book is that you need at least once a month a meeting of your key people where you take a few minutes in the meeting and just share good news from your lives. Not anything secret. We're not talking about becoming a serious sharing session, but remember that the people you work with are not robots. They're not cogs in a wheel. They're human beings. And the book, Encouraging the Heart, always says, remember that you're working with human beings. Pay attention to them. Expressing genuine appreciation for the efforts and successes of others means we have to show our emotions. So, we have to talk about our feelings in public. I'm reiterating what I said. We have to make ourselves vulnerable to others. For many of us, perhaps most of us, this can be very tough, even terrifying. Now, the next piece of this is, think about it. Are you going to have more success in your city with effective teams or effective individuals? The reality is people do better in teams. We don't do our best in isolation. We don't get extraordinary things done by working alone with no support or encouragement or expressions of confidence or help from others. That's not how we make the best decisions, get the best grades, run faster, achieve the highest levels of sales, invent breakthrough products, or live longer. You might remember that in 2011, the Dallas Mavericks won the NBA championship. It was a team versus superstars. LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. There were these three great players, the third one for the Miami Heat, who were supposed to win the universe. But the Mavericks beat them. And all of the commentators said, team trumps individual. Yes, a team does trump an individual. And we don't do our best in isolation, but when we work well together, then we have breakthrough results. We did our own survey and asked people to identify the most important non-financial reward they receive at work. The most common answer was a simple thank you. Now let me talk for a minute about a simple thank you. We live in a high-tech world. Everything is done on email or a text message. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very efficient. It's very wonderful. But I will tell you that something that is unforgettable is a handwritten, sincere thank you note. When somebody gets a handwritten, sincere thank you note, they save it. They cherish it. I have a book called The World's Great Letters. I'm guessing there will never be a book entitled The World's Great Text Messages or The World's Great Emails. It's the handwritten that makes a difference. And so when you think about implementing, when it's your job to implement, when you think about implementing this simple thank you, how about buying a set of nice little individual note cards and about once a week find somebody that did something extraordinary and write a thank you note in hand. It's really going to be valuable. Let's keep going. Recognitions are reminders. Quite literally, the word recognize comes from the Latin to know again. And so when you recognize someone, you are knowing again. Turn to page 3. The best leaders, over and over again, express their belief in the innate goodness of human beings. When leaders expect people to achieve, they do. When they label people underachievers, performance suffers. Passionately believing in people and expecting the best of them is another prerequisite to encouraging the heart. And so you need to believe that your people can be better. And if you believe that and trust that they will get better. And so what you believe becomes reality. Marshall McLuhan is reported to have said, those who think there's a difference between education and entertainment don't know the first thing about either one. Good stories move us. They touch us. They teach us. They cause us to remember. They enable the listener to put the behavior in a real context and understand what has to be done in that context to live up to expectations. Here's the fact. Let's go ahead and think about it. Have you ever been to an event where a speaker was boring? How do you feel? Do you enjoy a boring speaker? Have you ever stood up one day and said, I'd like to go to a meeting this morning and hear a boring speaker? But you've endured them. Boring speakers are boring. And that does not help you learn. In the same way, stories are critical to keeping things moving. You understand stories better than you understand principles. We all know that. That's why we like a good movie. We're going to do other books in this series of executive book briefings on communication. Communication failure is a disaster. So Made to Stick and Words That Work and probably others we'll look at. And here's the idea. If you have the idea and you can't get it into the hearts and minds of the people you're leading, you're failing. You've got to be able to communicate. And one way to do that are these stories that people grasp. So remember that. Personal involvement is a genuine expression of caring. It helps foster trust and partnership. Leadership cannot be exercised from a distance. Leadership is a relationship. And relationships are formed only when people come into contact with each other. We saw over and over again in our research, Kouzes and Pozner are very careful researchers. We saw that leadership doesn't depend on mystical qualities or inborn gifts, but rather on the capacity of individuals to know themselves, to know their strengths and their weaknesses, and to learn from the feedback they get in their daily lives. In short, their capacity for self-improvement. Peter Singa said that the only way to get better is to know what you need to get better at. If you don't know what to get better at, then you cannot engage in self-improvement. So Kouzes and Pozner are saying you've got to get better at encouraging the heart. So leadership development is self-development. You're helping yourself develop and you're helping your people develop themselves. It's self-development on both ends of the spectrum. To know what to change in our lives, we need to understand what we're doing that is getting the results we want and what we're doing that is not getting the results. Most people produce more in an environment where they get positive feedback. And productivity diminishes where there is little or no feedback, or where they only hear from their leaders if something is wrong. So let's talk for a minute about feedback. First of all, if you study generational differences, and this is in a book called The M Factor, but if you study generational differences, the oldest workers, what they call the traditionalists, people born before the baby boom, they don't want feedback unless they're doing something wrong. And then they're afraid of the word feedback. Oh, people won't like what I'm doing. Baby boomers got used to a once-a-year performance review. That's kind of an expected moment where they hear the good and they hear the bad. When you get up to Gen X, they are wanting something akin to immediate feedback. And when you get to the millennials, immediate isn't fast enough. They want instant in a multitude of ways. They want it from everybody involved, from peers, from bosses' bosses. But here's the bottom line. If you don't know what you're doing well, and somebody points that out, or if you don't know what you need to improve and someone points that out, you won't get better. So let's think for a minute about a lesson from sports. Sports seems to have a lot of lessons. Think about a Super Bowl football team. Think about Peyton Manning. He is hands down, everybody knows this about him, the hardest working quarterback maybe in the history of the NFL. What he does to get better is legendary. He gets on an airplane right after a game, and immediately on his laptop, he's looking at game film of what he did right and what he did wrong and what to do for the next opponent. He does it every waking moment. Well, that's what you have to do. You have to get that feedback, and without the feedback, you won't get better, and getting better is a full-time job. All right, back to the quotes. Values set the stage for action. So you've got your internal values and the corporate values, the organizational values of the city, and then goals release the energy. From the values, you set goals and you say, this is what we're going to do, and that's what creates the energy. Exemplary leaders make sure that work is not pointless ambling, but purposeful action. If you're leading people, and you give them a task to do, and they don't understand what it is they're doing, why it's important, they will not be motivated. So you have to give them a purpose. People need to know whether they're making progress or marking time. Goals serve that function. But it's not enough simply to know that we want to make it to the summit. We need to know if we're still climbing or if we're sliding downhill. So you need to give them feedback on their progress along with the ultimate goal. If leaders provide a clear sense of direction and provide feedback along the way, they encourage people to reach inside and do their best. Leaders make the impossible possible and motivate people to strive to make the possible a reality. Now, skip one. The set up to fail syndrome. Have you ever had a boss who set you up to fail? Have you ever been a boss that set somebody up to fail? The set up to fail syndrome is self-fulfilling and self-reinforcing. It is the quintessential vicious circle. High expectations or low expectations both influence other people's performance. Only high expectations have a positive impact on actions and on feelings about oneself. Only high expectations can encourage the heart. Turn to page 4. Leaders are out and about all the time. They're not in their offices much. The demands of the job keep them mobile. There's a line that came out of, I think it was Tom Peters who first wrote about this, maybe Ken Blanchard, but I think it was Tom Peters. And the line was, you've got to manage by walking around. You've got to keep in touch with all of the people. Who do you trust more? Someone you know or someone you don't know? Well, you trust someone you know a lot more. We listen more intently to a person we perceive as a friend, someone who cares about us, than we do to a person we perceive only as a professional associate. You know, there's an interesting theory. It's from a guy named Robert Putnam. He wrote a book called Bowling Alone, and he says one of the things that has hurt the team principle is that in the old days, everybody who worked together was on a bowling league together. And they worked, and then they bowled, and they talked at the bowling league gatherings. And so they bowled together, and they got to know each other. Well, it is true that the more you know someone, the better off the team, the more effective the team. When you really pay attention, when you're curious, when you look for the best, when you put others first, when you listen with eyes and heart, when you hang out, when you open up to and with others, then you find what you're seeking. You notice all kinds of examples of people living up to and exceeding the standards that have been set. You find lots of opportunities to recognize individuals for their contributions. All right. I want you to take your pen and I want you to circle this next quote. Honored and not diminished. That's how we all want to feel. Honored and not diminished. You know, there's a study on marriages that go bad. And the study is from the Northwest. It's been done longitudinally over a lot of years. And they found this, that when one partner ridicules the other regularly, the marriage is over. Ridicule is deadly. We want to be honored, not ridiculed, honored, not diminished. That is a key element of encouraging the heart. And so ask yourself, your boss, from your supervisor, do you feel honored? What about the people you lead, the people that are expecting it from you? Do you honor them or do you diminish them? If you're diminishing the people you lead, you should be fired. You cannot be a leader and diminish the people you lead. You can't do it. You have to honor them. In the new world of business, where it's every executive's job to make sense of a fast-changing environment, storytelling is the ultimate leadership tool. That's from Elizabeth Wheel, a writer. The best leaders want to get closer to others, want to be more intimate with others than do the poorer performers. And then there's a paragraph, I'll let you read this on your own, about celebrations, public statements that really do help people feel part of the team and then want to do even better the next time. Here's a quote from Paul Hawken, founder of Smith & Hawken. Another great quote worth circling. We lead by being human. We do not lead by being corporate or professional or institutional. We lead by being human. Directly and visibly showing others that you're there to cheer them along sends a positive signal. You're more likely to see others do it if you do it. It's that simple. So you're cheering them and they see you're cheering them and they keep going. Think about somebody running a marathon. There are all these people lined with water. Who are they looking for in the crowd? Their family, their husband, their wife, the person that is cheering them on that matters to them. All right. Turn the page. We'll stop there with the quotes. And now let's look at the key elements of this book. So turn to page 5, and here we go. Over on the right in the box, I try to summarize the book in one box. Workers are people, and people flourish when encouraged. It is the task of leaders to continually, perpetually encourage the hearts of the people they lead. So, to the left, the presentation outline, the heart of the matter, the basic human need to be appreciated for what we do and who we are. The leaders challenge the process, inspire a shared vision, enable others to act, model the way, and encourage the heart. Number one, the heart for leadership. People need encouragement to perform at their best. People are starved for recognition. You know, there are books, there are things to buy, there are little things to do to recognize people, but most leaders, I'm sad to say, fail at this. Now, if you'll take your pen again, I want you to put a box around this next area. The 7 essentials of encouraging. This is really the book. The rest of the book is all commentary. Here are the 7 steps to encourage the heart. And remember, the heart is that inside motivator of the individual person who needs encouragement. Here they are. Number 1, set clear standards. If you haven't set clear standards, if the person working with you, for you, does not know what is expected, they don't know if they're doing okay. So you've got to set clear standards. This is what is expected. Number 2, you want to expect them to meet them. Expect the best. Here are the high standards. I think you can do it. So you expect the best. Number 3, you pay attention. If you're not watching, if you're not observing, if you're not noticing, then we've got disaster. You've got to pay attention. Number 4, all right, now take your pen again and circle this one. This is what makes this book unique. It is brilliant. Personalize recognition. Now, there are two ways to do this. One way is that you actually do something to single out the person. But the other one, which is far more important, the other one is that you know what that person wants. Let me tell you what I mean. If you give everybody who does a good job the same gift, a gift card to Starbucks, a fruit basket, a gift card to Olive Garden. By the way, I like fruit baskets. I like Olive Garden. I don't care much for coffee. I'm just not a coffee drinker, so don't give me a gift card to Starbucks. But if you give everybody the same exact gift, then you are saying you're just a cog in the wheel. Everybody gets everything. But what if there's somebody on your team who has let me back up. Everybody on your team has a unique interest, without exception. And so, if you know what the unique interests are of the person on your team, if you have a budget for recognition, and you've got a person who happens to love NASCAR, then give that person, when they've done a good job, something to recognize their good job that's NASCAR related. Tickets to a race, a key video. That's what you want to do. You want to personalize recognition. Don't give a NASCAR lover opera tickets. And don't give an opera lover NASCAR tickets. And when you give a gift, a recognition award that recognizes them as an individual, then you are personalizing recognition. Now, the other thing is to single them out positively. There's a story in the book, Encouraging the Heart, where a man is working in he's the supervisor of a large group working on the floor. They've got a project, and there's a cylinder that has to be put into another cylinder. And so he observed one of the workers on the floor putting the cylinder in the freezer. He thought that was odd. He checked into it, found out that somehow it changed the size of the cylinder and it fit more easily. So he walked out onto the floor. He called everybody together, got their attention, 3-minute meeting. And he said, "Joe, go into the freezer." Joe walked in and he pulled out the cylinder with a check taped to it, made out to him. And the man said, the supervisor said, "Hey everybody, let me tell you what Joe did. This was a brilliant idea. You can all do it now to save you all time. And Joe, we thank you. You've helped us, and I got you a little financial reward there." So that was really cool. So that's it. Personalized recognition. Number 5, tell the story. Number 6, celebrate together. Have good, solid celebrations. They don't have to be expensive, but have parties where people celebrate together. And last of all, set the example. Leaders understand the value of celebrating together. Leaders set the example. Leaders continually challenge others to move forward. Well, I'm going to let you read most of this on your own. Let me give a couple of highlights. Page 6, look at number 2. You want to make sure that high expectations lead to high performance. And who leads the leaders? If you're a leader, somebody has to be leading you, and you have to be perceived as a follower as well as a leader. Look at number 3, pay attention, ditch the shiny badge. The old line is so true, catch people doing something right and reward them for it. Don't look for them doing something wrong. Well, you can read the rest of this on your own. Look at page 7. Look at the little set of initials, DWYSYWD. Do what you say you will do. Do what you say you will do. Well, here's what you need to do. You need to encourage the heart. Encouraging the Heart, a leader's guide to rewarding and encouraging others by Kouzes and Pozner. Thank you for listening.